Okay, we're back. Let me go full screen here. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in again to another quarantine live stream. I hope everyone's out there being safe and protected and not doing anything crazy. But going crazy, everybody's doing that. So in case you listened last time or couldn't listen last time, this is version or take two, as I like to say, is my interview with Brian Nilson. Brian, how you doing?
Very good.
Good. I figured it out. It was all my fault last time. Long story short, I clicked a button that I shouldn't have clicked, or it was clicked from using this program for doing my church service last Sunday, and I left it on. And so Brian was echoey. He was even hearing his own echo, which was making it hard to talk. So I'm glad that he was willing to come back on and try to redo this. I might delete the last one.
Yeah.
How's the family?
We're doing good.
Good.
It's I think worse on my daughter though. She's she actually is the only one that's really doing a good job of staying quarantined, but probably suffering for it.
Well, how old is she?
She's 14.
Okay.
So I think she's going to be 15 soon, but it's been rough on her.
Is she considered an extrovert?
I'd say so.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've heard it's really rough on extroverted people.
Yep. So she spends most of her time on Minecraft up in here if she doesn't have homework.
Right.
Yeah. And my wife was furloughed from one of her positions, and she still has the other one, but she's been able to help out around here too, which has been nice.
Oh yeah, and you've probably been getting some great research and development in. And
a little bit. I mean, it's been just swabs 24/7. So I'd love to be playing around with some of the other things that I know are coming right down the pipe. Even the material we are using for the swabs, I'm looking forward to transferring that over to dental.
Yeah,
because it has some really interesting properties that I haven't seen in other materials.
Yeah, well, and like I said, we'll get into that. I want to welcome everybody that's just logging on. Again, this is take two with my interview with Brian Nilson, and I was going to bring in Steve Szara. He's been on my channel many times, but he had a little emergency he had to take care of. Couldn't make it, but he said he'll try to come on if he can. If he can't, then it's no big deal. But just wanted to say that. And here's Brian's stuff. His Nilson Labs on Facebook, and then he's also on Instagram. I think I have it.
I haven't really figured out Instagram, but I'm there.
Yeah, if you want to ask anybody, it's Steve. He's got 39,000 followers. So, and one of these days I'll have Steve on, and he'll give us the rundown on how to use Instagram the best. Avanzada, thank you. Oh, and this is another guy. Look him up on YouTube. He's got some great videos too. And then what's a swab? Oh, did I misspell it? It's supposed to be swab.
Okay.
I misspelled it. Didn't catch it. Yeah. So we're talking about 3D printing swabs with Brian, and we're talking COVID-19. Everything shut down, and how Brian has taken his lab, his 3D printer, and converted it into printing swabs for testing kits. Do I have that correct?
It's a major component of the test kit. After the swab, you need the shipping medium for it, which is like kind of like saline solution in a test tube, and that's the whole kit. So the swab is kind of the main part of the test kit. It's a nasopharyngeal swab too. It's not a Q-tip by any means.
It goes pretty far deep in there.
Directly over, if I can do this in the mirror, directly over your palate in your nasal passage. So you kind of lift your nose up a little bit and stick it straight through there. I always thought your nose went up. It actually goes straight back.
Yeah, that's
it's a weird feeling.
Well, so have you tested it yourself?
I'm not admitting to it, but yeah, it feels weird. It's It was strange.
Oh,
I probably didn't go as far back as you were supposed to. I'm not willing to do that.
well, and I saw a video, and I should have brought it up, and it was somebody taking a selfie video at a drive-through testing place, and he was in his
the bloody
car.
one.
Yeah, yeah, and
it shouldn't look like that.
He went, ah.
Yeah. If you have a deviated septum or any kind of blockage or abnormality, obviously my nose was fine because it goes straight back there, but everybody's different. If there's something in the way in there, the swab has to kind of bend to go around it, and if it doesn't, it's going to push through, and that's you get bloody nose, and you'll hear crunching and cracking. Ooh. And it's kind of. And that was, if I'm correct from the video, that was like the original style swab, where it's plastic, like the inside of a Bic pen, with so it's flexible. They're about that long, and you have what do you call them? Electrostatically applied, like hairs. So it's Q-tip is just cotton swirled around the end of the stick. Yeah. This all the hairs stick out from it, and they apply those hairs electrostatically, so they're kind of like you stuck your finger in a light socket and they all pop open. That's why it looked big and puffy.
Oh, okay. And it was bloody on the end when they pulled that thing out. Yeah, he was like,
they tore something on the way through.
That is well, and okay, so that's the weird thing. When I first saw you were able to post something about printing 3D, I was like, I thought they had to be cotton.
Yeah, but they even the president thinks that.
Right.
Press conference, and I keep hearing that in the newspaper too. They're like, oh, they're just cotton swabs, but there's a lot more that went into the design of it, and the original ones were hospitals that are using cotton swabs. There are some, but they're doing oral screening, so they just stick the swab in the back of your throat and swirl it around and then take it. And that test, oral tests aren't very accurate. You're probably less than half accuracy.
So the nasopharyngeal, it gets to where the virus
where
collects.
All of it is. Yep.
Yeah.
You can hear it all the time. That is the gold standard of testing for this kind of stuff. It collects the most in an area where there's going to be more of it, and you're not diluting it with your saliva or whatever you had to drink just a few minutes before the test.
Oh, good point.
So that's a nice, accurate. And when I got, basically, if we start at the beginning of the story, I had gotten an email or a Facebook comment or something like that from Al Sablini at Envision Tech, asking if anybody who has the E1 printer and has, at that time we were trying E-Guide resin. So it's a surgical guide resin.
Yes.
And they wanted to use the surgical guide resin because it was already FDA approved for use in the mouth. So it was already going to be a little easier to get it through testing. And it was what everyone else was using. Yeah, that's what the resin's made to make. It's slightly flexible. But basically all of the splint resins from Envision Tech have a really good amount of flexibility to them, even though if you were to bite on that, you'd think it was hard acrylic. I can take pliers and twist it around quite a bit before it starts to break. Just different. I don't know much about what they put into the resin. I just know that it works really well in that capacity. And so the first rounds of swabs, I'd say the first week and a half of constant work, we were making the swabs out of that, and we were getting the design really close. I would basically say after he sent that word out, I said that I had the resin and I have the printer, and I was close enough to Harvard to go deliver the things. So we then went on, and he ended up calling me. I think I was coming back from my boat that day, and he called me up and said, I just got off the phone with the White House, and they need 350 million of these things, and we need to get going on this now. And it was kind of like the gun going off before the race started.
Oh, wow.
And then they got me, they sent me up some extra resin. They sent me the files to start playing around with them on the printer. And I'd print out batches. I think this is a early batch of ones that.
Oh wait, let's see.
This is like an early. These are cocktail stirrers now because they won't do anything else. But it took quite a while to get it to the point where we could take the swab and bend it like that without it breaking. These are going to break though. We got them so that they weren't breaking too badly, and we thought it was going to work. And we sent up a batch, and the people in the testing liked the shaft, but they didn't like the fact that they would snap in this area.
Yeah.
I remember that night we'd gotten the round of tests up to Harvard, and it was supposedly our last shot to be considered for this trial. The guys over at EnvisionTech kept playing around with different CAD files. We kept trying to make the swab a little bigger, make the components a little smaller, the connectors a little smaller. We tried them hollow. We tried them with a support structure on the inside, and everything kept. That's an old Bill style there. Everything ended up whenever we made it, they would still end up breaking. We got really close, but it wasn't getting perfect. And we'd already known that another company had been kicked out of the program because theirs kept breaking. So I just stayed on the couch till 2:30 in the morning, and we finally got on the phone because I was waiting for them to send me the finalized file. And then we got on the phone and we started playing around with different CAD files, trying to solve it from breaking, and couldn't come up with anything. Eventually, Al was able to convince them to give us another shot with a different resin, because we had sent them 2 samples of the resin. And then after they agreed to give us another chance at it, we got a sample built with a new resin that they developed. It's it was a softer, more elastic material, and it ended up working beautifully. It only took, I think, 2 or 3 revisions after that in the design to get it to the point we're at now, where they're approved and ready for use.
On this one, I see there's a snap or a little snap off.
That's a break point. So
is that still in the final design?
Yes, that's in all the designs. If you go back onto my screen with this swab, there you have 3 components. If you got this is the handle, and then this is the testing portion of it, and then you have the swab at the end of it. So the swab is designed to go all the way in, to somewhere around here. Everyone's going to be a little different. It goes in quite a bit, and then when the clinician pulls it out, they break it off and stick this in the test tube. That's a much smaller tube, so you don't have to use a 7-inch tube for the transport. That was another one of those little design things where they were breaking too easy, so we made it a little bit bigger, and then finally, every little detail of this swab was gone over incredibly.
And let's back up just a bit. Let's see if I can find it. From what we talked about last time, you actually had to test the material, send them pieces of the printed material.
Right. So that was the first thing I had to get up to them after Al called me, after the White House called him. Those are just samples of the material. They wanted a certain size, and I can't quote me. It's either like a PCI or a PCR test. I'm not a microbiologist, so I don't know exactly what it is. But basically, from what I understood, they were taking those little pieces, sticking them in a test tube with some solution to see if that material leached anything into or got dissolved by anything that the test would need. So that was a fun trip because it was all clandestine. We couldn't tell anybody. There was another 2 companies talking about how they're making these things all over the place prematurely, and of course, being on Facebook, I like to talk about what I'm doing, so it was kind of killing me that we made these in the middle of the night and drove them up to Harvard, up to the microbiologist that was in charge of the program, and I dropped them off with him. And then about a day and a half later, we found out that material cleared. That material eventually ended up failing, but that was like the first step. Then after the material changed, they tested it again. with a new material and some additives that they put into it.
And it was good you started with this because it was the FDA approved splint material.
Right.
So that was a good starter.
Right. It seemed like the logical thing to choose at that time. But as we got more and more involved with it, we started realizing how flexible they had to be, how they also then had to be sterilized afterwards. That was a big deal. This guy was the one who was in charge of all the testing up there.
You say he was oral surgeon from
No,
Harvard?
he's a microbiologist.
Microbiologist. Okay.
He's in charge of the entire microbiology department, from what I understand, at Harvard.
And were those the samples that you?
Yep, those are the first. Those are the first samples that I got the material design. I used my material for the samples, and we had to dry them and clean them with all the same protocols that were mandated, and then gave them to him, and then he took it from there. And then after that, once it got past that, I started passing them off to somebody else at the. I don't even remember what it's at, Boston Life. It was kind of strange because of the COVID virus, nobody wanted to talk to anybody in person. It was just like I'd drive up in front of a medical building in Boston, wait on the side of the road after I texted somebody, and somebody would come out with a mask. I'd roll down my window and hand them the package, and then take off. And we did that like so many times. It's just
that like a drug deal.
Yeah, exactly. And it was weird. I don't like driving in Boston at all. I have a full size pickup, so Boston's like the worst place in the world. But I'd go up there, and if I went the wrong way, I could turn around in the middle of the road and take the other way. It was just nobody out there. It was a ghost town.
Oh,
during the middle of the day.
Take a truck.
Yeah, it was a neat experience for that. It was up late all the time. We're always nursing prints and trying to keep them, make sure that they don't fail, because it was always, I get a file late at night and they'd say print it, and print would take maybe 3-4 hours, sometimes or less. But after that, we'd end up, I'd wake up to something like that and have to get another print going. With this, the problem is that the shaft is fine. You can see that the handle and the thicker part of the other shaft is just sitting there without any trouble. It's when they get thinner, they start moving around a little bit with the liquid in the resin. And this printer doesn't have any real pull force. When the printer goes down and then comes back up, it's not sticking to the bottom like in some printers, because you have a vat of air underneath there. But the liquid was viscous enough that sometimes it'd move the swab and then it gets stuck to the other one. And so then it's like, okay, we're going to reprint, but put them 8 millimeters apart now. And it was at the same time, I had already promised to deliver these in Boston by 10 in the morning. And
man,
there was lots of, it was an intense period of time. It still is, but now it's different because we're in production now, which is more controllable.
Are you still suffering any failures with the swabs? Or
no? It depends on the build style. It seems like they've gotten a quick build style down pretty good, which is 4 hours. I'm still relying on an older build style right now because I want to keep things very constant for the hospital I'm making them for. But it's a very nuanced thing. Each printer's handmade. They're all just a little different, so it takes a while for the Envision Tech you got to call them in, and they go onto the computer and you do all this calibration stuff and kind of play around with it. And because it's such a sensitive and long thing that we're making, it's you've got to calibrate like everything perfectly to get that fast print to work. And now the Envision Tech's really busy right now too, so it's hard to get them on the phone to help out with that. But
is it the specific Envision 1 that does this, or can they use it on
No, just this printer.
The Vector, not Vita, or whatever.
None of the
those other
others. No, this one's very specific for it. And as far as the FDA listing goes, you have to use this printer and that resin
gotcha.
too.
Okay.
So even if you could figure it out in another one, there's like one other on the market that was kind of a copy of the Envision one, and that could do it. But you have to, with the FDA clearance, you have to follow all the rules the same way. So that was another thing of learning how to deal with them.
Well, and part of the FDA rules, I noticed on your package, and if y'all see me look off to the side, I'm looking at a second screen at this same picture. And it says test bars, and then print it using eGuide, cleaned at 99% IPA, 2000 flash cure. That was all the guidelines you had to.
And the print code was important too, because every time we printed with the resin, I recorded what. I only had one of these printers, so I record the printer it was used on and what print job it was. So that was the first print. I just named it Rose Print 1, and then it just kept going up from there until I think we're on print like, I don't know, 24 or something like that now.
So you have to actually go in and change that number every time.
Every
almost
time.
like a FDA.
It's like part of the tracking protocol for it. So
lot numbers and stuff, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So
like
every time we print one of these, we have to record what printer it was, what day it was, So you get 3.5 to 4 prints out of every bottle of resin. So when you start using that bottle, you change the lot number on your paperwork. You end up recording what print number that was in the bottle. So it'd be like, this is print 14 with this lot resin. And, all this leads up to, if one batch of swabs goes out there and it gets recalled, I'll know if it was from my machine. I'll know when it was, who handled it, and who ended up getting them. So if I needed to recall something, it'd be easy.
Right.
It's similar to what we're all supposed to be doing with like expansion screws and acrylics and stuff like that. This is kind of a high priority item, and it's really it has to be controlled very well. The resin now is it's eGuide Soft is what they called it. And it was a resin they were working on beforehand. It started failing whenever it was sterilized, and they added, I don't know what they did to it. They added something to it, and it ended up passing the sterilization tests. Because when we got to the part where they were like, we like your thing, let's see if it can be sterilized now. Then we had to make some changes. I borrowed a sterilizer from Glastonbury Orthodontics in Connecticut here, and he was real friendly because he was shut down like the rest of us. So he threw the sterilizer in the back of my truck. Yeah. Because I'm not licensed to sterilize like as a business, but for the testing, it was fine. So I'd take the sterilizer and we bagged them and did a whole bunch of tests with that, and they were coming out great. So we started sending them off, and then the guys at Harvard were able to certify it after that point.
Now, this new resin, is it going to be for sale to general public, or?
I hope so. Because one thing that I'm looking forward to with it is I think it's going to be perfect for a few things. One of them will be like a partial denture, and I was already told that we should be able to tint it so we can get it to look like a lucitone.
Yeah,
it has great flexibility, a little bit of thermal reactivity. Yep.
You could print the clasp like they tried with those hotshot guns back in the day.
Yep. Those are always a mess. I think it'll be great for clasps, for appliance designs, and some orthodontic things as well. Right now the printer is just absorbed with swabs. I don't know when I'll be able to start using it again. Because I originally didn't get that printer to make models. We already had a system in place for that. Not worried about that at all. But I was intrigued with it because it seems to be the most capable printer for making intraoral appliances direct.
Yeah, that's what
And
is really amazing about that.
it's with some tricks and everything. I've been able to make Hawley retainers with it. It's not a clean process yet, but even with this e-guide, or not e-guide, e-guard soft material that we're using for the swabs, I think that might even work well for making labia bows that are clear
Ooh,
once they're played with a bit.
yeah, kind of like
And just
the clear bow that
yep,
I got a sample
exactly.
of. I've been dealing with,
Yep.
and in fact, I think I have pulled up because it was one of the things I was going to ask you. It was you were doing an expander.
I don't know if
And
it's
I'm
on my page. I think I put it on I put it on the 3D printing orthodontic study group.
yeah. Let's see if I can find that. Uh, but
Yeah, there's a
anyway, it
lot of
was here. It
components
is
too. Yeah.
where you is this other thing? Is this knee
Yep.
guard that you were using?
Nope. That's the well, yeah, that's eGuard. That's not the eGuard soft.
Okay.
So basically, that's their night guard resin, which is there's another video somewhere of me trying to break a night guard.
Oh
It
yes.
shows you how what it took. But this was fun because what I did was I took the a crudely designed palette because I had like an hour to do it. So I took a crudely designed palette and I built that box digitally. I have a scan of one of the screws that we use here, and I use
Oh.
that to size the box. And then you can see behind the box towards the back of the pallet, the retainer, is a tube on each side. And there, I put one forward of it too, so that there would be a perfectly round and lined up tube to add extra guide wires. So as it's
Oh.
expanding, it can't be torqued as badly. Yeah, you can see you got
Oh,
it
I
running through
see it.
there.
Yeah.
And that just gives that extra stability that sometimes these screws don't hold up great. Sometimes and this was an experiment, so you can see on the labia bow wire at the bottom, you can see a faint halo around the edge.
Oh yes.
So you can see where I had left. I burred out a channel for that wire to be dropped into, but I got better at it. As you can see around the Adams clasp
Yeah,
there,
I don't see.
you can't see anything.
Well, that's
It's
where exactly where I went
perfect.
to look. I saw
Yeah,
the halo. I was like, well, I don't see any up here.
right.
Uh,
And that happened. That trick. Basically, what I did was I didn't post cure the appliance until after it was all put together. So that everything was cured at the same time. And my theory behind that was basically that if you're post curing it, there's going to be some kind of reaction, like some shrinkage or some expansion, or something's going to happen to the plastic. So I put everything together and then use the same resin, put it into the channels to hold everything together, and then light cured it all at once.
did you pressure pot?
No,
No. So the cure.
I just printed it. I also printed a model, but because I'm not playing around with making the wires 3D, so I printed the model, printed the model in one machine. I printed the palette in another, and then put them together, and then used the same resin to drip it over the parts that need to be covered in, and then light cured it all at once, and it came out great.
Well, you may find a new use where you need a syringe of that material.
Yeah,
just
it's using like a little eyedropper, and it worked out. It worked out neat. It was a fun experiment.
so you're doing all the research and stuff I wanted to do, but I haven't been able to. I find it funny, I have this Form 2 printer.
It's a steady little workhorse.
Yeah, and it does exactly what I need to do, which is print models. And I noticed in this picture, back behind it, you got a model set up in the Form 2. So you're doing all the specialty prints with the Vision Tech and just the workhorse.
That was the goal of the machine. Like I said, all my aligner models are made in that transform. I've got the form printer is used by another tech here that just kind of got set on that one, and that's all he knows how to run. So we use that. And then I do a bunch of little test prints and experiments with that little black printer. It's
Let me
not
pull
as
that.
hardy as the rest of them, but
Yeah, the little black one. Now,
yeah,
let me pull this.
it's a Shuffle XL.
This little one on the far left.
Yeah.
Okay. And last time you said this is what you're down to. That means you had.
Yeah, we've played around. Like I said before, our first printer was a B9, one of the first ones. It was a projector printer that literally had a film projector underneath the machine, and it was open source. So you buy the parts and put it together, and it was a neat introduction. But that was a long, long time ago, and I only used that for jewelry back then when I was making. We had a custom jewelry shop. So,
This is cool. I got up a.
yep. That's their new one. And then if you scroll over, you can see the projectors on. Yeah, that's
a projector, like an actual projector.
Yeah.
Like, so there's an Epson down here.
Yep, definitely. It worked well. But it was so open source and new back then. We buy the chemicals to make our own resin. You have to mix it and try to figure out what would work with what settings, how much light, how long each layer goes. Printers have come a long way since then.
That's well. Talk about your research and development. I feel like you were doing all this to gear up for this moment.
Yeah, it feels like that. It really does. Learning how to do all the CAD work for jewelry that I wouldn't have had to do with dental helped out a lot too, because I was able to understand what was going on with that. A lot of the CAD software we use for dental is just so very dental driven that some of the terminology and the things that you can do with regular CAD software gets left out. I like blending that together. I use a Rhino. Is a CAD software I like to use, and Blender. We do use Mesh Mixer like everybody else, and some of the other ones. But making little weird parts for Class 3 type appliances and things like that. That all gets done in regular old-fashioned CAD software. Building things in 3 different planes of view, and it's just another little skill that can be used a little bit to add to this.
Yeah, that I've seen the Rhino 3D software coming up on my.
It's a good company. One of the things I like about them too is that when you buy their software, you get it. It's yours forever.
That's
you have to pay. You have to pay for extra upgrades if you want. But if you don't want an upgrade, they don't cut you off. They don't take away your dongle and say you can't use our software anymore. It's just like keep using it. I've lost my software several. I'm using 7-year-old CAD software for it because it's still great, and I've lost it a couple times, and they'll give me my number back and say here you go. And it's a good company.
Well, and that's I want to do stuff like play around with what you're doing, making that expander, and I thought of making the under pallet with using night guard material that you would snap wires in, but I don't have the background that you had during jewelry.
I try to share the little files that I come up with that I send out. I've got some articulator ones, some stop post ones that I've posted. If people want them, I can share those because they're fun. I've got a little articulator arms where if you want to take two models and have them rest in an occlusion.
I saw that.
Pins that come out. I made them with little hands instead of just straight bars, and it's just for fun. There's a lot of weird little things you can make out there. And if I have a file, I try to put it up to that 3D orthodontic study group page.
Oh yeah, I was in the wrong one. Let me see if I can find that. And I love that this whole industry of sharing.
It's not the way it used to be.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's totally different now. Let's see if I can find that. Yeah. Well, there's a post from. Let me pull this up for you. From Al.
Yep.
Start with the ventilators on the.
Yeah, that was an early. That style of ventilator tube is used in other countries a lot, and they did run out of them. The way those things print is amazing. There's no support, and you can't see it from that. If I've got one here, actually, that I'll put up. But if you can look in there, there's like a U-shaped. Basically, this tube goes in and down here. There's a smaller hole on the inside of this tube, and the oxygen tube goes onto here. This goes onto the mask, and they feed extra oxygen into here, and this causes a Ventura effect to mix the room air with the oxygen that's being pumped into it.
Oh,
and so that's it. It's a way of enriching the air that the patient's getting because they're not getting enough oxygen. There's lots of styles. This was another one where it's tough to line up with that screen.
Oh, I see something in there.
Yeah. But in the U.S. for some reason we don't use this style. It's some kind of a semi-adjustable thing. It's smaller. It's about that big. The oxygen tube goes in it, and then there's a little valve that you can adjust. And I have seen those files, but I didn't bother trying to print. By the time we got done playing around with these, we were kind of on to the swabs full time. We worked with trying to get ventilator splitters going, and that's on the cover of that page. It's just a Y connector. There's really nothing to it. But the problem with that is that if you have two patients that both need a ventilator and you only have one, they both have to be about the same weight and age. You want like patients on it. You can't have a child and an adult on it because the machine can provide enough. If I'm correct, I think the ventilators will provide like 16 liters of air or whatever to the patient, and the patient only needs like 2. So they can split them up quite a bit, but the machine is only able to regulate what it's giving to one patient. So every time you split it up, you're creating this little risk factor. And then if the machine goes down for any reason, now you've got staff, because I've seen people talking about putting 4 on there or 8.
Oh, gosh.
And if you had 8 people stop breathing because the machine failed for some reason, you won't have the staff to fix things before there's a real problem.
Cold blue for 8 people at the same time.
Yeah.
And
and Al was working. They understand more about how to measure air velocities. Last I talked about that with them, they were trying to figure out a way of measuring the air coming out and going back into the machine from each patient. But I wasn't a part of the project after that. That may be farther off or farther down the road. Getting the swabs done was kind of the biggest priority.
Well, and testing, is step one. You got to make sure whatever they're suffering from is or is not COVID. Because if it's something they know, they can treat it totally differently.
Yeah,
and they may not have to get to the ventilator.
Next fall, we're probably going to have more of a problem because we're going to have to differentiate everybody with the flu from COVID because it's still going to be around.
Yeah.
So testing's going to be an issue either way.
Even though I think somebody did some research and CDC is not registering any flu cases right now. It's like it doesn't exist. Everything's been categorized as COVID.
It is very different though. My brother's an anesthesiologist in Boston, which is basically it kind of like coats and fills your lungs up with mucus, and you can't get them to breathe. You can't get them the oxygen they need. And there are some things that they're doing now. If there are some advancements that have come along to help save these patients, but for the most reality, if you get put on that ventilator for too long, then they're just waiting to get you off so they can put another person on, and you're not going to survive it.
That's what I've heard. If you end up on a ventilator, your chances of survival went way down.
Yep. And then every day that you're on that ventilator, your chances keep going down.
Mm.
So finding out early on what you have. They're probably going to be using these tests to try to get people back into the workforce, or at least to monitor populations.
Yeah, and something that you could send your employees through a drive-through to get swabbed.
Yep.
And hey, if you're free, come on in and let's get going.
And if I'm going to get swabbed, I'd rather use the ones that we're making than any others that I've seen. So that's nice and flexible. There's like a little bumper designed in the end of the tip, so when you hit the back wall of the nasal cavity, it like gives a little bit and keeps you from hurting the patient.
You have a thing here that you sent me, a microscope shot of the tip.
That was an early design. What we tried to do there was go as small as possible and try to get little hairs on the end of it. The printer did amazing. That level of detail is crazy.
Yeah.
But that was made out of that harder splint resin, and it was thin and it was very flexible. But you could, once you bent it 90 degrees, they'd start breaking. Actually, that one was hollow, so it would just collapse altogether.
Oh.
So there were a lot of versions of these that we went through.
There's another. That doesn't look like. Does look a little different.
That's just another version under the microscope. Okay. I think I sent you one of the approved version. If I'm correct. Maybe I did.
Is that what they look like? Oh no, I'm looking at this wrong. It's still printing the.
It's still printing. Yeah.
The tip down there. This isn't a resin coated tip.
Right. Yeah. Those are the ventilators.
Yeah, I don't have
I guess I didn't send you one. Yeah, it's basically like a honeycomb that's designed to pull any of the mucus and stuff out of the nasal passage. So there's like little holding cells inside an octagon like design.
Yeah, what I saw it just looked like
interlocking
mail.
Octagons. Yeah, kind of like chainmail.
I was and I found, getting off subject a little bit, I did find this.
Oh yeah.
I loved. I remember seeing this and thinking, "Oh, that hand is creepy."
I think I used that for immediate dentures, and then I thought it was cool looking enough that I put it out there. But basically, you take that file, import it into Mesh Mixer, and you can expand it or shrink it depending on the size of your model, and just duplicate it and place them around. It's a little tricky that you have to keep the two halves combined when you're placing them, and then you have to separate their shells so that they don't print sticking together.
Oh yeah,
other than that,
it's pretty easy. Hand can slide onto the pole.
Well, there's a cutoff in the middle, so the hand is holding on to that articulator pole, and the two halves nestle together with there's a divot on one side and a bulb on the other, so they lock together. It's just for holding the dimensional, the space between the arches, so that you know where they're supposed to be. It doesn't work as an articulator. It just shows you where the bite is.
I was thinking you had. No, you didn't.
Yeah, I haven't updated in a long time on that.
Yeah, well, you got this one, which is, and then of course the cool laser welding you're doing.
That's the jewelry side of things.
Yeah, I bet that kid, you couldn't complain about that. And then of course, is this? No, that's a wax up.
Yep, that's a wax up. I don't think I have pictures of the 3D dentures on there at all, or that's a 3D printed denture.
Yeah. See, that looks really good compared to some 3D printed ones that I've seen. They look economy.
Or is that? It took a while. No, sorry, that's a regular. They do look about that good though. Basically we're printing them out in a single tooth color and then using a GC curing product to add all the little nuances that make it look like a real tooth.
Yeah, let me pull this back up so everybody can see. at least the teeth part of it.
Yeah,
We talked about
that's
this
3D
last time.
printed, right?
Yeah.
So that's I think actually, and that one, it's a good example of using cheap software. I made that completely in Mesh Mixer, and basically took the I think it's a Chris Barnes or something like that tooth library, placed all the teeth and placed them over because that's a it's all one piece, and it's going to be mounting on to 3 like cut down Pontics. They're not. It's not going on an implant. They're just reducing the tooth a bit and dropping that over it. But the teeth are completely 3D printed, and then we use the GC paint on material. There's like a little bit of ochre in between the teeth that you can see, and then we're using some gray and blue along the incisal edges,
Right.
To give it that Malamon effect. And then after that, everything gets coated in a really, really hard light cure resin, and it gets finished up and shipped out. And they're surprisingly hard. Like I think I went over it last time with you. They're FDA approved for a year in the mouth, but that's because that's about how long we've had to test them. I mean, we're probably in clinical trials that it lasts a lot longer than that. It's definitely it's a composite. It's really tough stuff.
This is one of those where the temporary looks so good, the patient won't go back and get the permanents. They're like, "Hey, I like it. Don't change it."
But he'll probably end up losing other teeth. So once they start losing them, it's usually a sign that they're not taking care of them in the first place. Yeah.
That is, getting into all that stuff, and I just really the research and development you mentioned last time. That's what you're really liking about all this is the research and development behind getting to do this.
Yeah. That was the fun part of it, I guess. Playing around, they had a great team at Envision Tech for putting this together. I worked a lot with a guy named Miguel. It was he's the lead tech for the printer itself. But with all that we did, I really got to push into what this machine is capable of. It left me feeling like the money that I spent on it was definitely worth it down the road. Because as you play around with new products, it kind of gives you ideas for another product. And even the material that failed for with the first round of test swabs, I want to use in other areas now, just because it showed how capable it was if you play around with how thick it is and how you set it up and what you're using it for. There's a lot to play around with, and a lot that we haven't even come close to exploring yet. That as an industry,
and it's that whole. And we didn't get into it. We could probably start kind of finishing up with the Envision Tech printer. You mentioned last time, it drops, whereas my Form 2 it cures, it raises up, and and then drops back down, and then.
Yeah, and it's sticking to most printers it goes back to the B9 printer, which is, as far as I know, they were the first ones to do it this way. There may have been some others, but it's designed on this idea that you're projecting an image into light cure resin, and you're gluing that to your build plate, and something can't stick, because it has to be able to separate. So they were putting a silicone sheet in there, and then as time went on, we changed to like a Teflon sheet, clear Teflon material, and that's what's on your LT tanks now for the form, if you're not using the originals. And so you've got that silicone layer, and then you got a layer of nonstick clear material too. The build plate goes down, and you light curing glue a layer to that, and it raises up, stirs it around, and goes back down. I got rid of the wiper years ago, but you're constantly pulling against that Teflon sheet. And even though it's not a lot of force, there's a little bit there. So when you start printing stuff that's really fine, or if you get a really wildly like a lot of suction on a print, you can hear that tray kind of pops sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
And EnvisionTech got away from that by making a build plate that was oxygen impregnated. And I'm sure I will slaughter the real technology behind it, but they're pumping oxygen through the build plate, and the material that there is at the bottom of your resin table there is like an air hockey table. It has millions of little tiny holes in it so that the oxygen can come up through it. So when it goes down, it's curing on a layer of oxygen, just like if you put your hand over a air hockey table and that puck's kind of floating around on it. And so that way, when it's pulling up, there's nothing that it's trying to fight against to pull it up. And they're able to get, because of that, instead of the printer going down and then coming back up, resting, going back down, coming back up, it just goes down, and then each layer comes up a little bit. And with the machine, you just hear it like grunt a little because it's just a tiny movement. But the motors are so controlled that it's just absolutely finite. Every little layer that goes up, and it just literally builds straight up as it goes. Like in Szara's video, you can see it just builds straight up without the going back.
I was just now pulling that up. Let me see if I can play that real quick. So yeah, the 3 seconds per layer. That's just
It's good. It's good stuff for emergencies. That resin too is pretty nice.
That's
a little hard visually while doing ortho, but it's nice and hard stuff.
Yeah, and that. But that's the stuff you don't need separator. You don't need any special separator, right?
That one, if I'm correct, I think that one you do. The one you don't need separator for can't print that fast because it's really wax based. It's a strange material. I've tried it out, but we already have our systems in place for 3D printed models. So I haven't really spent much time with the model side of this printer. And like I said, I got it so I could direct print dentures, direct print crown and bridge, direct print appliances, indirect bonding trays. I'm hoping we've direct printed splints and they come out great. And now we're going to be able to direct print eventually some more ortho appliances. And as soon as I get done with it all, so we'll be able to do some sleep apnea stuff. But that's more of an FDA game.
Everybody's scared of getting into that because that's definitely regulated.
Yeah, it is tough to figure out, and it is scary because we're used to being kind of lone wolves in this industry. It's not as bad as it's made out to think, but it is money. It's when I first started, I had asked Priscilla at JBC about it, and she kind of walked me through a little bit, at least calmed me down about the idea of it. And then from there, you just follow the instructions. And as you get used to it, as you look at it more and more, a lot of it does make sense. I understand where they're coming from for a lot of the regulation. The cost, I think, is prohibitive. And it's unfortunate that they've set their costs so high. I don't think it's really fair for smaller businesses.
Right.
But it is what it is.
Well, and when they're creating this, they're not thinking 1-2 man, 2 woman labs. They're thinking not even labs. They're thinking like
huge corporations.
Yeah.
And it even says that on their website. It's like this annual fee is everybody has to pay, no matter what the size of your industry. There are some exemptions for smaller businesses after you get past the initial registration. There's lower fees for doing certain things, but if you have less than 200 employees or something like that. As far as I'm concerned, 200 employees is a huge business. So
especially with ortho, that's just a monster lab. And you're sitting at 3, right? 3 plus yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
3 plus myself.
And that's Steve is 1, and I'm 2 with me and my wife, and you're 3, and it just graduates up from there. And I thought I was in a huge lab. We had 7. And I was manager of that. and your workload, you can just almost double in this
There's still
industry.
there's still something good about. I mean, the smaller labs. I think we're better at the whole customer service thing.
Oh,
We can reach the doctor at a different level, right? But the most fun that I have is when a doctor calls up and wants to design something or has a problem
oh yeah,
that they need fixed. I mean, that's the best part of it. So, and you can't do that once you have 15 people. You're a different thing
yeah.
altogether.
And,
So,
and and I've even heard of doctors complaining like, "Who's making my retainer now?"
yeah,
It's like, "Oh,
it's
we
like
assigned you to Bob over there, and he's
yeah.
new." Well, I
All
want the
right,
same person.
I've gotten that too. I've talked to a doctor and it's like I've been bending their wire the same way since the beginning, and all of a sudden they feel like something changed and they're wondering if somebody else is doing it. It's like, no, what does that mean?
Yeah, wait,
It was
is this a
just
good
me.
thing or bad thing?
So it's an interesting field.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
and it's changed, and I think there's an article coming out where someone's interviewed me in the JDT, and it's the niche market of ortho compared to the other dental.
yeah,
And I was mainly talking about just 4 years ago, it was only the big labs that had 3D printers and could offer that service. And nowadays, you get a Form 2 for 3,500. Most
yeah.
people could put that on a credit card or pay it off somehow, and they can get back into offering the service the doctor wants as a small lab with
Right.
the high technology of 3D printing.
Yeah, and as it keeps changing too, there's more. There's more coming up. I'm really confident about that, and that we're. I'm not sure where sintered metals comes into play, but that may be part of it.
That
I know Uganda's so big on that over in
Yeah,
Greece, and I think there'll be parts of that. I'm not really sure exactly where that's going to play out in the end, but I'm really hopeful for the new chemical technology for 3D printing and what we're going to be able to play with going forward. The materials are getting stronger. They're getting faster to print, more versatile. I'd gotten a sample of some ABS material that if I could make dental appliances out of that, they'd never break. It's just absolutely amazing stuff. And they have to go through a certification process, but
right.
that's all still coming because it's proving to be useful for the manufacturers to make this stuff. And then we have to come up with the design ideas and the new things to play with, the new ways to use it, so that when a doctor calls us up and says they have a problem, we have a new solution for it in this other material. We may be making regular RPDs out of plastic at some point,
just because it flex better than metal and
or make it so it doesn't flex even though it's plastic. There's a lot that we can play with, and the printers are getting much more accurate. So I think this is going to be an interesting next 10 years.
Yes,
in the industry.
I'm glad to be able to follow you on your social media. I'm glad we have the social media, so
it helps
we're not
out.
in our own little pods, trying to figure this stuff out. We're helping each other out. You're posting stuff and seeing what's out there. And in fact, how you and I got introduced was I had a RPE that needed sheets. There it is.
I got that today. Yep. Not much is coming in these days. So.
Yeah, you were excited, and sorry I let you down. It's just my RPEs. But you have a laser welder, and it proves to me that's got to be my next purchase technology-wise is a laser welder, and then
or some kind of welder.
Yeah,
there's a lot of
TIG
options.
is what you were used to.
There's a lot of options out there for it.
Orion and Puck, and there's a lot. And again, we're all in this together, and that's what's the best thing up. And we're coming up on the last minute, and I think we ended this really well with kind of what the future of this industry is going. And your first, not responder, first frontline experience with R&D in a pandemic is a great vision to see.
It makes you not want to go back. It's just like I just want to keep making new things.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to go back to just retainers. Oh, so boring. But like you said, it's given you something to want to create next, some ideas, and you can see the limits of the materials. So what does the next couple weeks look like for you? You think? I know it's hard to predict.
Yeah, it is hard to predict. I mean, we've been just printing 24/7 for these swabs. There's a lot of post-processing work that goes into that too. So there's some effort that goes into it. And then I've actually been getting calls from doctors' offices that they're starting to stagger in a little bit. So I'm going to have to learn how to blend the two together for a little while. Because we'll probably be making these swabs for another year at some capacity.
Yeah. Especially if they're like the number one to use as a swab.
Yep. I know. In Vision Tech, they're printing millions of them. It's just they've turned all the machines that they had into this big farm factory, and they are cranking them out like crazy.
And then you have ones like you and Steve, that have this, and they send you the
filling
file.
in up to our capacity. We're filling in too. So it's been interesting. It was more fun during all that time, though. Now it's just production. Anxiety and
So, babysitting, still up late babysitting, hoping that last print.
The machine, it's dialed in, so I know now that it'll just keep going. But each step has to be done at the right time. You can't just clean them and leave them for later. You have to finish the product.
You got to go all the way through. To the end.
So it's a lot of work, but it's been worth it. So we'll keep busy.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on and talking to us about this. And again, if you could find him on Facebook, Nilson Labs, or any of those Facebook groups I brought up, he's posting in there all the time. And of course, his Instagram. And you and I both need Steve Szara to help us figure that out. And I really appreciate you coming on board, and
thank you,
and giving and if you need to contact, like you said, you're willing to give out some of those files. They can contact you, I guess, through Facebook. It might be
that's probably the best place to get me. Because when somebody leaves me a message, it stays there until I get to it. At least if you email me, it'll get lost.
I'm running through the same thing. I'm applying for PPP and a mortgage loan at the same time, and I'm like, wait, which application am I filling out? Which documents do you need?
I'll get lost.
So again, I appreciate that. I'm going to play us out if I can find it with an outro, and then we'll call it there. It's been an hour, and it went smooth today. So thanks for doing take 2 of this interview.
Thank you.
See you later, and happy bending.
That went good.